Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to welcome you after lunch. I'm very happy that we can discuss such a vital and important topic, such as decarbonization, with all the plans and solutions which have been done recently. We need to discuss how to live further. So we are many, the participants of this session. More than half of us also are online. So I suppose we should discuss two questions. The first one is what the cooperative players are going to do from the viewpoint of particular steps towards decarbonization. And also, we're going to speak about the institutional, organizational measures, so reporting system, reporting the emissions, publishing open data, and also some network solutions, what the companies are going to change in order to bring down the carbon footprint. Also, we are going to discuss the institutional positions and R&D, academic positions, how the experts see the situation, and the Russian government bodies as well. And the second group of questions will be related to the fact actually what we are going to do at the regional level. Everybody has heard about the pilot project in Sakhalin, but this is a specific project because this is a region which is in the raw material, so to say, segment of economy, but the Leningrad district is in the tough competition with other industrial parts of Russia. So we need to speak about the carbon emissions and the carbon footprint, but not mitigating the quality of product manufactured. And the third group of questions under discussion will be related to the green energy and the energy of renewables, such as wind. So we have already invited all our participants, and I suppose that the first talk will be the introductory talk of the session for everyone to understand the situation and to speak mutual terminology, so to say. And now I am going to invite the first speaker, Igor Makarov, Chief of the Department of the R&D institution affiliated to the Higher School of Economy.
So I'm glad to welcome you all. It's a big honor for me to talk at this wonderful event. And I will give a talk which actually should immerse the participants into a range of issues which was mentioned. So my talk is a consequence of the EU Green Course for Russian economy, but I will start with a description of carbon border adjustment mechanism. Then this trans-border adjustment will be set in a wider context, and then we will connect it to regional statistics, to regional dimension. So carbon border adjustment mechanism, or trans-border carbon duty, as they call it, or carbon transport, carbon border. So it's called English carbon border adjustment mechanism. It will be introduced in the EU since 2023, but from 2023 to 2026, it will be a kind of a pilot phase of this project, and within scope, no payments will be assumed, only reporting, and the actual payments from companies importing their products into the EU. They will be started in 2026. So the purpose of this activity is to fight in emissions or combating emissions. So EU, so to say, significantly strengthens the legislation, and they have to compete with companies from other jurisdictions where there is no such a strict carbon regulation present. So EU companies required from the EU introduction of that carbon border adjustments, which will, so to say, level up rules of the games with European companies. So we assume that this mechanism will cover all the emissions, scope 1 emissions, so direct emissions, but EU says that they might widen up to scope 2 emissions, meaning those which appears at production of electric energy, and so by 2026 there is not that many of doubts that scope 2 emissions will be covered. Maybe not in 2026, maybe a bit later, but it will happen for sure. So this regulation covers 5 industries: is cement, black metal production, aluminium, fertilizers, and electric energy or power supply. So it's very important. So buying that certificate, CBAM certificate, it should be purchased by the importer. So it's not a duty for the exporter, for Russian companies, but it's a duty for companies importing products to the EU. So it's a duty for European companies. So it's not the attempt to regulate other jurisdiction, but it is an attempt to regulate intra-European companies, but of course it will affect Russian exporters quite strongly. The size of payments will be calculated based on the European market prices. Currently it's 60 euro per ton, but later this price will increase. By 2030 it will be about 100 euro per ton. So of course we cannot give you exact numbers. In parallel with the introduction of this CBAM, they slowly refuse of free distribution of permissions for quota sales. It will be a very important mechanism, which many people consider as appropriate, who said that CBAM is in contradiction with the WTO rules. So this mechanism will be slowly removed, and importing manufacturers will be brought to the similar, so to say, settings with others. And one more thing. The companies, they can either on their own show the amount of emissions produced during manufacturing products imported into the EU. Our Russian exporter may prove that manufacturing of the exporting products has a specific number of emissions, and then only that emission amount will be considered as a base to calculate prices for CBAM certificates. If such information is not taken into account, then they take into account averaged industry values. And in that case, each company should consider if they want to open the information on amount of emissions to produce that products or not, as they prefer to use average values. And besides, if the exporter country has a price on carbon emissions, then could be taken into account by 2026 if carbon prices will be appeared, and exporting companies can announce it, and the corresponding payments made in Russia, they will be deducted from that total payments size within with the CBAM certificates. What is the meaning of that for the Russian companies? Today there are lots of so to say opinions saying that Russian companies will pay by 6 billion euro a year. Usually they talk about losses of 5-6 billion euro, but from my point of view, it's not very proper way of calculation, because actually payments are done by importers. So the product importers, if they have high pay, if they have to pay high prices, if it is a high carbon, if there is high carbon footprint, then they will refuse of the Russian import. So we should consider losses not like direct payments of Russian companies as the people do, but as the potential market loss. But for some companies which are considered as relatively green or less energy consuming, it would be even result in gain in the new market, coming to the new market, because they will be in better conditions. And we have a big project with their World Bank, who they calculate potential losses for the Russian markets, Russian companies, for the Russian power production. It means almost complete leaving the EU market. For black metals industry, it could be losses of about 20% of export, and for fertilizers, loss up to 60% of export. These are our preliminary calculations based on the model of general balance. And some of the losses will be compensated with increased export to other regions, but those losses will be quite significant. On the other hand, with the framework of the Russian economy, it's not that much. We're talking about 2% of Russian export in total, of the total Russian export. But nevertheless, it means considerable losses in specific industries. What you can do with that? We can use different strategies at level of companies as a state. And the good solution for some companies, evident solution for companies, is repackaging the trade flows and exporting the least carbon-using products. More products with greater carbon footprint would be sent to the local market or to the other markets. So current suggestions of EU or European Commission, they don't have any constraints on that. Though we can say that later EU will create some other regulatory reforms to, so to say, to prohibit it. And of course, the companies should be able to assess and verify their own emissions, so to pay for certificates according to the actual carbon emission. It will be less carbon footprint than they take as an average value. At the level of the state, they talk about, so to say, contestation in WTO, because WTO is in a rather complex situations, and all those disputes, it will take too long. Of course, we could provide, the state might provide calculation of minimal average industrial carbon footprint values. For instance, I could say that at the moment, within the framework of the convention, they take the mean value of Russian power energy of 525 grams per hour, and some consulting companies consider it 375. So if we prove the lower mean industrial value in power industry, it will considerably decrease payments for CBAM, and the state, I think the government should think about that to prove that the carbon footprint is lower than we consider they consider initially. And of course, we should introduce national prices, carbon prices, and though it might mean some losses within the country. And I should say that carbon border adjustment, it's a part of the more higher scale processes. It's not the main hazard. If you look at the European Green Course or Green Deal, It's one of the multiple different issues. We could see there are such aims for the coming decade, like increasing the section of renewables by 2030 by, so to say, 40%, reducing power supply by 2030 by 36%, introduction by since 2035, ban to sales in new cars with combustion engines, internal combustion engines. And but we should say that the losses related to the potential demand on fossil fuel, they show very clear negative trends for us. And we should say currently 127 countries aimed on the aims of the carbon neutrality by the middle of the century, and already 64 countries introduced carbon prices. You see the geography of carbon prices. Then transborder carbon regulation or adjustment discussed not only in the EU but in many other countries. And financial regulators, they set more and more serious requirements to banks. There is a process of divestments from dirty industries of the large investors who have large investors said that they would not invest into fossil fuel industries. So we can talk about the losses for the Russian economy, which is significantly higher than the losses of carbon border adjustments, which cover only several industries. And generally, there will be some losses, but not that significant on the scale of the whole country. And here we see some scenarios of Russian export. Of energy carriers, so basic scenario where no measures are applied. Then NDC scenario, if the countries will do what was promised in Paris, and this scenario, many countries has reconsidered their obligations, and 2-degree scenario shows what would happen that if after 2030 the countries will set to the goal of 2 degrees, which was set in Paris, and which assumes carbon neutrality by the mid-century, the Russian export will drop down even stronger. And then talking about the transborder carbon adjustment and similar mechanisms in other countries like USA or like the USA or China, which instead we should say that carbon intensity of the Russian export, Russian market, is the highest in the world, and it's clear that the risks for the Russian export with regard to any border carbon barriers are higher versus other economies, other global economies. What's going on in Russia? Finally, in Russia it's already appeared, it's already been, so to say, developed, so to say, environmental regulation. A new draft federal law was prepared on limitations of green gas emissions. We already mentioned this pilot project in Sakhalin. So the logic is the following. At the national level, the regulation is rather mild, and the companies coming to the global markets, they should on their own manage climate risks or environmental risks. The state doesn't provide lots of help. Exporting companies, they face barriers at international markets, and they should decide what they're going to do with those barriers. The strict regulation might happen at some regions. Sakhalin turned to be the first with that regard. Other regions in Russia consider, so to say, using or applying that experience, and that's why the last thing I want to tell, it's about the following, that at the regional level, there also might be carbon regulation might have sense. And it was in the Russian production practice, when things starts at the regional level, not the federal level, it's not new. Similar situation was in China when some regions launched their own local or regional regulation systems, and then it transferred to the national levels. A similar mechanism was seen in Canada. So why the region might need carbon regulation? What could be the sense of it? Well, as I said, it's one of the mechanisms to support competitiveness at the international market. To be competitive, the company should consider the carbon footprint, and the government, federal or regional, should stimulate company to decrease this carbon footprint. Second thing could be the good stage to prepare to future national regulation, national stricter regulation, which will appear in Russia. Then it is a possibility to attract investments of Russian or foreign companies. This graph shows expenditures on emission decrease in different countries in the world. Russia is showed here as a dotted line, and it shows that almost in all regions in the world it's cheaper than in other countries versus India and China. It means that that potential to decrease emissions could be done very effectively. So what is the potential? All global companies saying that they want to be global neutral, carbon neutral. Also companies which are under EU regulation, American regulations and Chinese regulations. When they talk about the emission decrease, quite often they cannot decrease emissions to zero on their own, and they should decrease emissions through some other approaches, and they're interested in decreasing approaches where it is the cheapest. So if we decrease emissions and it's the cheapest approach, why not to involve investments, gain investments from that companies? But for that we should create carbon projects. We need to create our own emission regulation system, so to have those projects not only for foreign companies but also for Russian companies, first of all. And for that we need regulatory framework which should be created, should be generated. At the federal level we see it is appearing, but at the regional level it could be done faster, like it is done by Sakhalin and some other regions assume or plan to do. And so it's quite possibly that the regional emission regulation system might have good sense. So it might be of different forms. It's not mandatory to make it like in Sakhalin, where they have this quota selling system. We could develop a system of monitoring, reporting, and verification, which is connected to the federal level and related to international, based on the national standards. We should set final goals to decrease emissions and to developing the, so to say, stimuli to decrease emissions, both negative and positive, and developing so-called offsets, so the companies could decrease emissions not within their own process, but within all other any other processes, like so to say forest sector, or for instance so to say communal pay. Sometimes it's easier to decrease emissions from boilers, for instance, related to so to say living related to the so to say sectors of different types, and we should take into account there are some mechanisms which might help you to decrease emissions. And I think that's it from my side, and I'm sorry for maybe taking too much of your time. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mr. Makarov. You described the global framework, and thank you for that. But prior to discussing some other global issues, I would like to talk about some specific cases. For instance, as a territory of the Leningrad region, we have several exporters of mineral fertilizers, which, according to EU directive, will be forced to be, so to say, to be challenged with those regulation. European regulation. This Eurosim company, as Alexander Dresdenko mentioned today, it invests already in the third project of gas chemistry, and we have here Sergei Tverdokhlev, who is not only the Deputy Director of Strategy and Policy of Yevrochim, but also he consolidates the position of the large Russian business within RSPP committee. So question to you: large industrial companies who feel or see those risks, what they think about that, what they're going to do from the organizational and institutional point of view, and how they, in fact, or in reality, how think about decreasing their carbon footprint.
Thank you very much for the talk from the Higher School of Economics and for the question to me. First and foremost, indeed, we invest a lot in the development of our production capacity and increasing productivity and cost efficacy in the Leningrad district and all over Russia on the platform of one of the oldest enterprise of ours, Phosphorit. We have just launched the construction of the new Yevrochim Northwest 2. This is a new production site and with the support of Leningrad district government. And I would like to say that motivation of this or that investment activities, which we are currently implementing, is not related to trans-border regulation. Although in the recent years the trans-border tax has become something that we are afraid of, it's a popular scare of ours, but its real-life impact doesn't look too drastic and doesn't change the expert positions. And many companies that we have already mentioned within the Committee of Climate Policy share my viewpoint. So I suppose that the pathways for European experts have already been modernized, and the carbon footprint in the majority of our products, and Yevrochim products is not an exception, which the product which goes to Europe is either comparable to the European benchmarks or at least or even better. I suppose that the current capacities that we use in the Leningrad district, the carbon footprint of our ammonia is 1 ton, 900 kilos for a ton of product, and the European benchmark is does not even correspond to that. So I would like to say that the best and the lowest carbon capacity in the world is 1 ton 300 kilos per 1 ton of product. So I would like to say that we are going to be the ones who will push away more carbon consuming companies or suppliers. Even where it is not possible, as Igor has already mentioned, there will be redistribution of the trade pathways, and somebody will not go to Europe but to some other markets, because there will be a redistribution of them, and it's going to be a complicated story. But I suppose that by implementing our own investment strategies and managerial strategies and discussing the regulation that is in Russia, we are not going to first of all react to the trans-border European tax. The speaker has already told us that there are other trends related to decarbonization, which are more relevant, more important. More and more clients at the moment take into account, so to say, or want carbon-consuming products. And that is why we have many more voluntary systems which are results of the climatic projects, and we need to take part in them. So if we speak about what we can do, we can actually say that it all goes into three clusters of events. First of all, this is further technological optimization of production processes. For example, if we speak about our production sites in the Leningrad district, this is further energy efficacy, automation of all the production and manufacturing processes, because it brings down all the costs for energy and other resources and other consumables. It allows us to optimize the manufacturing processes and also maximize the productivity parameters. Yevrohim Northwest 2 is going to be one of the best digital enterprises of this kind. So, but there are always limits to everything, and you cannot go further without closing down the event, further just reducing the carbon emissions without closing the production site per se. So all the enterprises which are related to the optimization, this is 3/4 of this pie of 100%, and the remaining quarter are most expensive measures and events, which, as a matter of fact, are maybe about two things. These are renewables and also capturing and storage of CO2. So renewables are twice as cheap if compared to the other one. But for the chemical production, and for us being part of it, the absolute volume from the viewpoint of reducing the carbon dioxide emissions is actually not effective. And that is why we're looking at more expensive solutions, which are about capturing and burial and storage. At least for our enterprise in the Leningrad district, we have already started looking into the technological and economic aspects of this project, although it is clear that this project will be probably in a decade from now at best. And the last cluster of things, which Igor Alexeyevich also mentioned, is actually the purchase of offsets. This is voluntary participation in the carbon dioxide footprint market. So this can be observed in the social sector, in construction. So that means compensating technology, compensating the carbon footprint. In this respect, we are waiting and even working on a regulation base which will allow us to do this voluntarily projects in Russia. And last but not least, if we come back to the transborder tax, in many ways, this particular tax is an experiment. Most probably, it will prove to be unsuccessful. We hear more and more voices in the European Union at the moment that, as a matter of fact, this transborder correction is not effective because the consumers are not 100% happy, because, as Igor has mentioned, they are going to pay. The manufacturers, in fact, are not happy because Yevrohim has 2 production sites in Europe, and they are scolding the project a lot. And especially if we take into account the energy crisis in Europe and the situation when the energy resources and power, in fact, is very expensive. This negative rhetoric towards the transborder regulation will be ever-growing. And I suppose that the partners, of course, they observe the situation and would be skeptical in terms of wide application or extrapolating this practice to other regions of the world, because there are other more effective instruments of looking at carbon footprint and climatic regulation. Coming to the conclusion, I would like to say that it's evident that the climatic agenda as well as decarbonization, both of them are significant challenges for the country, but we have good potential of responding to this particular challenge. I mean, responding with a very good outcome for my company and for business as such. We should not be shy to say that we can be successful, and I don't want a reaction to these particular challenges to be a copy of some, copying some models. So we hope for a good balance of agenda, and we can actually see that at the level of the region, the accent is towards stimulating correct investment, but not introducing, restricting, or limiting regulatory measures. I suppose this is a very good experience of our plant, Eurahim, and we can show very good regional level of stimulating investment into correct projects, correct things, which also accompany us to resolve very serious aspects of decarbonization. If we sum up what you have said, it's great that you have started by giving an account of correct and particular measures. So first of all, modernizing your current process as well as the reducing the carbon consumption. Also, you have mentioned digitalization and energy efficacy improvement, and 1/4 is capturing and procurement of offsets. So your particular colleagues, Rusagra, what are you planning to do? Mikhail Turkin, please, but you have about 3 minutes. Dmitry Anatolyevich, dear colleagues, good afternoon. Rusagra sees that the global warming impacts every region of the world. And you can see droughts and forest fires. They impact the regions which are previously were considered to be agricultural regions, and there were no risks to this agriculture. So we need green economy, but we cannot do this shift in one go. For us to adapt to these new principles, we need certain time. Our board of directors the previous year approved the complex strategy, a comprehensive strategy of such transfer. And we're actually going to not only reduce the greenhouse emissions by 14% from the basic level, which we consider the level for 2018. We also implemented a big project on power plants, which so we need maximum efficacy in mining enterprises as well, when we mine ore, as well as the natural gas, and the biogas production accounts for 85% in some of the mining sites. And so the green energy projects for agrochemical projects include different development of new battery, as well as the procurement of offsets. And also about 20% of this, all the product will be produced by this type of energy. We also assess the rating of suppliers monthly in terms of green technologies that they use. And also we develop new products which we already have in our line. Rosagro is the first company, private company, which has become the partner of strategic agreement with the science, with academic science. We have decarbonization projects for the agriculture, which take into account the decarbonization of soil, for instance. And we also signed the agreement on bringing down carbon footprint for Rosagro and for Vologda region, with the participation of Russian Academy of Sciences. This is the project which is going to become one of the first in Russia, and we hope that it will be successful. In Vologda region, we have a manufacturing site where we're going to develop a new forest for carbon footprint elimination. So the minimal area is going to be 65,000 hectares. At the moment, we are working on this polygon and piloting approximately 300 hectares. This is a joint project between several R&D institutions, 91 scientists and experts, both Russian and experts from abroad. Up to 2023, we are going to deal with this project, I mean carbon reduction with typical solutions, both for the Vologda region and most probably they will be extrapolated to the Leningrad district. We developed this project, and as the previous speaker said, we would like to do voluntary certification, and further on we can release it in the market with further implementation and reducing the carbon units. The first project is going to be deployed in 2022. Then we shall evaluate it and then extrapolate to other sites of Vologda. We shall be assessing it by subgroups. Thank you very much. Vladislav Valerievich, I have a request to you. There are two companies who told about their plans in the course of this transfer towards green economy. And I know very well that one of the thematic ideas of developing such green technologies is reducing the carbon footprint. So it's very important to say that the Russian companies should not be just publicly declaring their intentions, but really reducing the carbon footprint. What do your studies show? What is better? Our Western colleagues, are they more successful on reducing the carbon footprint, or Russian companies are successful as well? I have a couple of slides to show the situation. May please go there. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Indeed.
Well, his company is, I don't would say it's a kind of a strategic. We wouldn't say it is, so to say, shows no responsibility. And when they say it by 2050, we often, when we talk about 2050, it seems like we wouldn't live to that time or wouldn't do that. And to say it's so, to start not from the corporate story, but from the state. To say the largest producer of greenhouse gases is China. And they say that we would not decrease emissions till 2030. We will only increase them, but then we will rapidly decrease them and will provide carbon neutrality in 20 years. And the question is how you want to do that. How are you going to implement this plan in the national scale? There is no actual answer at the moment, but the announcement on carbon neutrality is more or less positive. In the corporate world, such practice is widely used. It's a well-known story of European, American, international companies, even Russian companies, proclaiming plans on reaching carbon neutrality and environmental measures, which are, so to say, considered for many years. So we should look what is promised and we should consider what are the plans behind, what are the relevant actions behind those plans. So let's look at this situation. To the basic issue, when we talk about the environmental agenda, it's data, it's disclosing your data, and the reports providing or disclosing the data on the activity, we should consider if they are sufficient or not, and we should say that what is verified, is this data verified, what is its constituents, and others. And international, there are and various companies like Bloomberg, they prepare international standards and financial consequences of climate risks. But for instance, if we take as an example the oil and gas industry, which actually or naturally is considered as a first place, we can see that Europeans, those who have these green tails, because of the stricter European regulations and more requirements on information disclosure, they are more active with that regard, and they disclose more, promising different things, providing data, having a separate environmental policy, within the general company policies, and setting up carbon neutrality targets. And in this case, Reuters published data only on 2 Russian companies, Rosneft and Gazprom, where things are quite fine. But no carbon neutrality targets have been announced yet. And moreover, the rather rare event, but getting more and more popular, is the pressure from the side of public entities through courts on the companies, actually making the companies or forcing the companies to decrease emissions. The well-known example is a court case from Netherlands, which in May this year was a civil. It was a civil case of one of the environmental organizations of Europe. Royal Dutch Shell was considered to be partially guilty in climate change, and they were obliged by 2030 to decrease greenhouse emissions by 45% by 2030. We don't have such a practice in our country, but the companies which are more or less involved in such activities have production or export products to the European markets. There is highly probable that they might be challenged with that form of, so to say, forcing. And talking about the second part, since our internal company, is it possible our companies can they be comparable with also what's going on and what is considered in the climate agenda, in the environmental agenda? What's the attitude of international companies to that issues? One of the aggregators, if I can say so, the data on disclosing environmental reporting, it's a CDP, which is a pool of investors requiring disclosing of the relevant information through reports, through reporting. In other cases, they say that it would affect company position in financial markets. It's one of the examples of environmental ratings. There are different environmental ratings, and some of the companies are very well presented, some not that well presented, and we don't have such a thing in the company. Talking about the climate, how this climate change, environmental law changes, how will it affect regional companies, regional production? This is the whole way the company should go through. We should understand large companies, leading companies in the energy sphere, which plays a main role at that industry and actually provide energy for production of goods or provide services to smaller manufacturers. Yes, it's not scope 1, but it is scope 2. But nevertheless, depending on openness, depending on the transparency of large companies, the largest industry players, it will finally affect mid-size and small-size companies, especially the same industry. It was well-known. It was the last thing I would like to mention, that it is quite well-known discussion which happened before the publication of Green Deal this summer, and during the discussion, and still the discussion is going in the among the experts. So the discussion is still ongoing. That we can actually separate the company, and we can say that from our factories, which are more carbon neutral, we will make products to the countries with strict requirements, and to the other markets we will leave our products which are not that, or those factors which are not that carbon neutral. But there is a good argument as an answer. They say that actually we need to take into account the average carbon emissions in the country. Of course, there is competition, but for instance, if we have carbon-based power stations which produce electric energy, which is used only within the country, but along with that, our renewables or any other carbon-neutral power sources are used for export or to produce exported products. This is, so to say, from the point of view of the national regulation, it is a bit unjust because it means that we like subsidize our exporters internally, and inevitably we redistribute, so to say, this action on internal consumption, and it's not right. And it wouldn't happen since 2023 to 2026. But Europeans, they do not say, and other countries, they say, they don't say which regulation will be implemented in the USA and China. So I mean that the rules will not change because Europeans said that we're experimenting, but we assume that we should be ready to that the rules will become of that experiment might turn or will turn stricter. Thank you. Well, once again, all who are here gathered, we should understand that it wouldn't be the easy way out of that situation. We had several theories. First theory will be, we might say that all our carbon footprint is consumed by our forests. We will do nothing. The second idea, we will take the duty inside. It will be, everything will be, all the money will be left in the country. Nothing will pay to Europe. Second thing, we will export only clean products, and carbon dirty products will go to other countries. But also it would work. So in any case, we will have to implement that system. And so, considering what we've talked about, I would like to ask Anton. I would like to ask Anton Kaczynski, he represents Russian industry. It's a cement plant in Russia, because they will have to be involved in the first wave of this carbon tax. But it's also an international company. So what's it going to do with that regard? Thanks a lot for this opportunity to share our international experience. Our company, Tesla, is part of international Heidelberg Cement Group, which is one of the market leaders of such materials, construction materials in the world. And decarbonization topic, it appeared not today, not this year, not even not last year, but it is relevant for quite a while already. And measures and roadmaps which we use in the countries where they have regulations for emissions, they were also, so to say, applied to the Russian factories as well. And talking about the Leningrad region specifically, for about 3 years, we actively diminish our carbon footprint. And I could say that at the moment, the level of our carbon footprint versus other companies as a group makes us the leading plant globally among our other factories, other plants in our group. Talking about the specific measures, I would like to share with first action, which might help rapidly you to decrease this carbon footprint. It's switching from the coal to natural gas. Last year, we'll switch 100% to natural gas at this plant, and several years ago in other plants in the Central Federal region, because the difference between the coal and natural gas in emissions is almost 40%, which is quite a big deal. And second, another important measure is a complete, so to say, review of our product portfolio, to the portfolio with a clear focus on products with low carbon footprint. And we also started to do it since 2016, and at the moment, more than 70% of our product portfolio is products with low emission, low carbon footprint. And at the moment, we're one of the leaders in our group within our group of companies on emission-wise. And the third means that is also very effective is the use of alternative fuels like DRDF. That's why our company highly respects efforts of the government of Leningrad region, which will provide us with RDF products, which will help us even decrease even more that emission size. And not as the last place, as I should say, as international company, that we have pilot projects. For instance, we at the moment have such project in Norway, along with Norway government, where we're going to so to say to catch CO2, and then we'll think about how we're going to use it later on. These are experiments, projects which we are going to take into account and actually consider. So on one hand, I should say it's a challenge. It's an issue, but elevated effectiveness and adaptation to new realities and investment program might provide us with might provide to the Russian companies very, very interesting opportunities, because at the moment there are lots of factories, productions in the northwest Russia and in central Russia, where which could be really competitive even at the European market, considering that these realities of that new legislation or regulations. In your words, I would focus on the thesis which you started with it. We're working with that issue for about 10 years, and I would like to everybody who is here in the room and everybody is watching us, I would like to say you, we should look at the position of Eurohim, Fosagra, and the cement factory. Actually, they renewed their production during the last years. It's a new production plants, and their production regarding the carbon is one of the best in the world, because once you see another regulation decision, it will be turned on in Glasgow, and the targets will be will become stricter. It will become stricter. So, as we say in Russia, it's too late to drink borjomi, or too little too late. And all the speakers in the talks, they say that there is a direct carbon footprint from technological projects, and there is an indirect footprint related to energy sources. If we take the total volume of CO2 emissions in the world, then 74%, as far as I remember this number, it is total emissions related to power production, to power industry. And we have representatives of wind industry. We have this person live and in online and offline. I would like to ask a question to Viktor Blizgunov, the chairperson of the wind power industry. So I would like to ask a question: what are the perspectives of wind energy production in the world, in the national level, and in the northwest Russia, the Leningrad region? Because we have such a news. There was a revolution that happened these days. The cost of selecting one unit of wind generation unit was found to be lower than gas or other type of energy, so gas-based, so to say, unit or any other product. So what do you think about that? So thanks a lot for that. You nicely described that the revolution happened. Yes, it happened just a couple of days ago, with a tariff for the energy from wind generating stations decreased from 17.7 rubles per kilowatt hour. So it shows that wind energy production, with power production in the nearest future, will be similar industry as traditional power sources, and also considering the agenda of today, is going to be a very convenient and profitable, so to say, tool to decrease carbon footprint of the company. The Leningrad region prepares the new project, which is going to be called Project Number 1, with a wind park, which will provide energy to the factories, planning to decrease their carbon footprint. It will be the first of the series of projects which are gonna provide electric energy at the market for these purposes. We know that power energy has greatly developed in the country due to the governmental support, but the price on capital expenditures and the energy cost decreased. And today it is a nicely formed industry, and the Leningrad region has a huge potential for the development of this region. They have a great potential to build wind parks. We calculate it's about at least 500 megawatts, and also they have a good potential for using renewables energy sources like wind generators, as well as lots of companies interested in production of components. And the energy region, there are companies who can do it, and I hope that in the coming 3-4 years we will see news that in the Leningrad region they start production of some of the components for wind generation industry, and we will have more of wind power parks. Thanks a lot. Also, we have online Boris Bokarev. We have Center of Strategic Developments of the Northwest Russia. So could you tell me, please, how do you see? What's your point of view on the perspectives of wind power production and hydrogen power production? Is it a topic relevant for today, or we should turn back to hydrogen-based production in 5-10 years? And Boris has the some so to say activity in the EnergyNet Northwest.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much, Dmitry, for an opportunity to speak about what we in EnergyNet think about the climatic agenda. We have 3 major directions, and I suppose it would be absolutely correct to start with hydrogen, as this means long-run prospects, and this is a field for investment. Actually, you should take into account the regional agenda, because the Leningrad district is and can be very important stakeholder in the setup of hydrogen clusters at regional level, both from the viewpoint of technological effects, because hydrogen is a product of massive export, and Russia is planning to occupy this niche of market. I mean, experts of hydrogen, and I suppose that Leningrad district will play a major role here. And we have good examples of hubs which are created in Europe, like the Northwest hub, like port area Usluga, can be a good hub serving for these purposes. And it's not only in the Polarnaya Zori in the Kola Peninsula. We can also use wind energy as well. Not only nuclear and hydrogen projects. We can use such renewable as the energy of wind, and I suppose that the most prosperous here is an opportunity to set up new technological, so to say, technological pattern, which is based upon hydrogen, linking energy, transportation, and household services. So these are long-term prospects, but the mid-term prospects and what my colleagues have already mentioned, Vladislav mentioned this quite extensively, and he said that despite the fact that Scope 2 is not on the threshold of this technology, but they have a number of local solutions which require certain assessment and evaluation of these climatic agenda parameters. So on the one hand, it may seem that we in electric energy are prepared or are being prepared to do this, and we should definitely register the rights for further transfer of this right to the production of clear power to the consumers, and such opportunity is being organized at the moment. But on the one hand, we should say that we do not understand up to the end what scenario we should be going on. And we have already said that these patterns can be changed, and I would put it even clearer. I suppose that the rights and rules that have already been voiced, they actually are all about a fantastic scenario when hypothetical exporter continues buying energy from the wholesale market and then adds up by renewables, and then has the right that his emissions have been reduced to zero. I would like to say that we should say that Russian energy market should be recognized as a market mechanism, and also the mechanism of certification will need to be recognized as a market mechanism or market tool. This is not going to happen. As a matter of fact, this will, via the documents that we can see, it has already been done. I would just make this bullet point more stringent. Also, I would like to say that there is an opportunity, and I will come back to it a little bit later. The revolution that has happened in the Russian market shows it clearly that the consumer can already construct its own generation using the renewables and gas. And this is another direction, the direction of creating active energy complexes when the generation is used both with and without emissions, which allows us to mix up this energy greatly and also to achieve the cost of electric energy at a good market level. So this is the option that I would call optimal, and this is exactly something that reflects the potential of the Leningrad district that should be utilized, and we should think about the fact of creating opportunities for direct agreements of supplying electric energy from the renewables, as well as direct investment into renewables, for us to construct the wind parks, windmills, not for one region, but for a coast area, up to the Urals, for example. By doing this, we will allow to make the cost of renewables optimal and equal to the customary sources of energy. So I would say when the volumes are big enough, then the cost of the electric energy will correspond to the wholesale cost. This mechanism must be set up. The sooner the better. And at the moment, what we have, I will give you an example of an active energy complex, which for the exporters, for example, in Ulyanovsk area, this is an industrial park, Zaluncha. For the exporters, they are not worried about the emissions, but about the compliances of the European counter-agents, and they unite their resources and interests, and they try to construct their own wind mill park. The price is going to be approximately 15 megawatts of wind, but if it is mixed with the gas generation, it will be just lower than the wholesale market. So Ulyanovsk actually shows this example of consolidation, which is good enough, and it was discussed at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, how we can do it right now. The key point solution is going to be piloted in the Leningrad district. It's a small project for 2-3 megawatts. This is going to be with the use of renewables, just like an experiment, a pilot. And I hope that in the beginning of the next year, we shall invite you for the opening or deployment ceremony. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we also have Gustav Relangi, President of the Committee on Energy from the Association of European Business. Ernesto, I would like to ask you to comment on the talks of other participants. So what, from the agenda of decarbonization, from the European perspective, you consider to be most important? Thank you very much. As I see it, there is such an element as sustainable development. This is a very important element. And I suppose that in Europe we have drastic and revolutionary changes. What happened? We understand that there are new stringent requirements. And by the way, everyone understands that the agreement which was reached 5 years ago in Paris, they are already obsolete. And that is why we have more stringent measures at the moment from the viewpoint of renewables role, acceptable emissions. And we should understand that in Europe the experiment was not started today. Some 15, 16 years ago, in fact, we started this emission trading system. We know that in Russia we have very good experiments on the pilot projects in Sakhalin, and also a new law which regulates voluntary CO2 emissions. And there are things that we should understand all over the world. This is the topic which touches upon global community, and subsequently the solutions that we seek are also global. This is technology, 40% of technology which are absolutely mandatory to reach zero emission by 2050 does not exist. For this, we need huge money investment, not only political will. And we actually need some sort of investment. And as far as I understand, in Europe, there are many companies that require a great deal of investment and support, subsidies. And thanks to these subsidies, the renewables, they have approximately 37% of the market. The technology has become much cheaper. And subsequently, the companies do understand that the improvement in the energy efficacy makes the company more cost-effective. And that's the most important. I understand that there is this transborder taxation. I understand that this is the topic that is not appreciated by Russian side, but if there is some goods that is produced abroad and exported to Europe, this is something that should be somehow regulated by the European Union. And this is not towards Russia, it's towards any participant of the market. I should say that there are a lot of experiments on obligations, on offsets. You probably know that it progressed to such an extent that it's inevitable. And of course, we should understand what's happening in Russia, like offset exporters, for example, to Europe. This is an effect that changes the energy balance in Europe. So subsequently, it will be some sort of new rules of the game, both in Europe and in Russia, because we will need a drastically smaller number of gas. But gas still will be consumed. And most important is that we should understand that the price for gas has grown of late. Gas is still mandatory, it is still needed. And also, it is utterly important for the Energy International Agency asks Russia to supply us with gas, but on the other hand, there are sanctions over the northern pipeline. This is a contradiction. So if you need gas, then we need investment into the surveillance, into the geological projects and development. So we spoke about great investment from 1.5 trillion. 550 should be allocated to green projects, and that's important. I suppose that this is a platform, a very good platform for ideal cooperation between Russian and European companies, and this 40% of technology that we still need to devise. I suppose it gives us huge opportunity for cooperation, international cooperation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ernesto. So we also have Alexei Kozhevnikov, Chief Managing Director of Rosnano company. And we know that Rosnano is planning to create low-carbon zones. So I would like the participants to know more about this concept and also what is going to happen within these particular projects, what is required from the regional authorities and regional politicians, as well as industry. Alexei, we cannot hear you, unfortunately. We cannot hear the speaker. Alexei, there is no sound from you. Can you hear me now? Excuse me, please. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am, for the first time, present at such constructive discussion. Thank you very much for the presentation that you started with. And I will be very brief, as we are very pressed for time. As far as I understand, the viewpoint is very much in line with what Vladislav Anischenko mentioned. We need to understand more about the restrictions. The restrictions from the side of the European Union can become more stringent. And generally speaking, we have already spoke about the fact that we are doing something and it will be recognized. No, we should not be trusting, should not be cherishing this hope. I suppose we should be doing more in the direction of renewables. We actually participated in one of the contests and we won it. This is for a carbon-free zone. We need to propose the national solutions for exporters because that's the most relevant problem. And here we propose to not to reinvent the bicycle, but just undertake already well-developed pathways. These are the industrial parks, technological parks, and we can also propose some additional infrastructural and investment solutions for such territories. So the initiatives are here. They come from the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, and at the moment we are just agreeing the details. I have the presentation, but I will just say a couple of words about that. We suppose that working with there are two scopes of this project, and we are going to have a number of projects on this agenda. These are going to be we can have up to 50% of carbon footprint reduction, and subsequently the tax will be reduced as well. We have developed this project, and Boris has already talked about the Ulyanovsk area. Ulyanovsk is our first pilot region, and the Leningrad district as well is our good partner, and we cooperate with the government of this region, which we are very grateful for. In Ulyanovsk at the moment, we are working with the active supplier of power, and also we have good experience that we have accumulated while cooperating with the Ulyanovsk area participants or stakeholders, and I would like to say that we continue our projects and they are going to be successful. We are currently developing laws and regulations within this area that will help us to deal with the sensors for the distant or remote monitoring and just on-site monitoring. And I hope that such parks will be developed in the nearest future. Approximately 50 carbon-neutral territories are going to be developed in Russia. So this is going to be our nearest future, and we are currently working on regulations. As I've already said, we shall be supporting and helping the regional powers as well as the managing companies, which already exist, I hope. So this is going to be a similar just project which can be franchised, and they can be a franchise for such regions where there are a lot of production sites that need to cut down on carbon emissions. So I suppose that not a lot of said about these projects at the moment, not many discussions around, but I hope that in the nearest years to come, we shall be working alongside with our colleagues from academic environment, and we are going to work more with the governments of different regions. There will be pharmaceutical companies, fur producers who are going to take part in this project. So to draw an analogy, we would like to fix this projects and try to trace the carbon footprint at every stage of production to understand more about the carbon footprint at particular stages. In this particular respect, I suppose that technologically we understand how to organize all this. Unfortunately, I don't have time, but if I had, I would tell you in more detail. So I will cut a long story short, and in the nearest future, there are three pilot projects, Ulyanovsk, Leningrad district, and another one. So we are going to have initiative from other regions as well, which we also invite to the project. And I suppose there are no reasons that are currently showing us that we may not succeed. So carbon-free or carbon-neutral territory is quite an adequate response to our exporters. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, we have finished the presentations as we started slightly later. I propose to finish a bit later and to give one insight from our today's discussion and one message to take home. And also, kindly tell me what you, in your personal life as physical entities, as just people, what do you change or ready to change to bring down the carbon footprint? I will set an example. And then I will invite Igor Makarov and continue one by one. So if we speak about the network decisions, then this is the decision which is related to regional offtakes. In the Leningrad district, we have a lot of smaller settlements, and we complain that there are no household projects for them. Maybe with the new realia, there will be new offtakes to increase energy efficacy. This is one of the solutions that I have made. And in my everyday life, I minimized red meat consumption and also consumption of milk, cow milk, and I'm planning just. I'm maybe lucky. My professional activity is related to the questions of decarbonization and also the economy of climate change. That is why the majority of my work is devoted to this particular activities and their consequences. And in my private life, I actually try to minimize my carbon footprint. So I try to take also, so I sort out my waste and I take a decision on consumption of this or that goods. When it comes to the message taken from our discussion, I liked very much the fact that at the regional forums, when you speak at them, I'm usually the most revolutionary-minded, so to say, saying that if we don't act, we shall be late. But today, I suppose that all my colleagues have been just this way, minded this way. We need to act, we need to take action, the sooner the better, and we do understand the scale of events. Yes, it's a revolution indeed. All over the world, we have this revolution. It's decarbonization. So, and it's how not to be late tomorrow. This is a very correct slogan because we need actually to take this into account. This is about hydrogen, decarbonization of industrial processes, regulation at federal and regional levels. Thank you. Sergei Tverdokhlebov.
Да, Дмитрий Анатольевич, спасибо за
Dmitry,
хорошие
thank you very
вопросы.
much.
И с точки зрения того, что я вынес из сегодняшнего мероприятия, я развил бы мысль Игоря Алексеевича.
So I would like to develop the Igor Alexeyevich thought. So it's the first time that I participate in a regional forum where all the participants are part of decarbonization process, speak mutual language, operate the same concepts and definitions, and they are ready, enthusiastically discuss particular steps that should be undertaken within this direction. I would like to thank the organizers as well, because I managed to hear very structured discussion. And it's a balanced discussion. Nobody actually wants to take any irrational decision.
Ну а с точки зрения собственного вклада, ну вот видите, не прилетела в этот раз в Петербург, сократил углекислый газ за счет авиации.
So,
тоже вариант. Спасибо.
I didn't fly to St. Petersburg, so I just did not leave the carbon footprint. So thank you very much, dear colleagues. For me, as a company, we need carbon-free zones, and we are present in 4 regions of this country. I would like to say that we need to share our experience and reducing carbon footprint at a personal level. This is consumption as well as sorting out the waste, and most probably the next car will be electric. Thank you very much. And by the way, for everyone here, I would like to announce it. We have already written an application to the governor on electric chargers for the cars, creation of them, because for those who will procure these cars, we will need actually to drive along the Leningrad district. So Vladislav, the microphone is yours.
Сначала вернусь к вопросу про гринвошинг. Вот история про то, что не прилетел и сэкономил,
So, the economy.
Это вот как бы история шутки шутками.
You actually said that you didn't leave the carbon footprint because you didn't fly the plane, but the plane flew anyway. So you didn't bring it down. Second is also energy strategy of the Russian Federation to be revised, because in fact it states that we are going to increase the export and the production of oil and gas and all the rest. And the next one, the internal insight. And I'm not speaking about
Форум, в общем, один из центральных, но осознал, что
So I have understood
планирование в нашу жизнь,
that planning in our life is very important, and I've been working with the I've been planning a lot, and I would like to say that many things have grown into reality. You can plan for 2 years, further on it's not very effective, so planning for 10 years and more is not effective. So, and in terms of the personal experience, I would like to join the previous speaker and say that I change my car approximately once in a 10 years. So at the moment, I'm not sure that I drive safely because my car loses spare parts on its way. So in 10 years from now, actually, I'm not going to, so most probably I will buy a hybrid car or an electric car. So that's my personal plan for the... Okay, Vladislav, knowing you very well, I suppose that even if there is a generator to the switch to the bicycle or connected to the bicycle, you will actually probably feed this electric car yourself because you are so energetic. Anton, what do you say? Thank you very much, Dmitry. And once again, I would like to say that today, all of us understand that decarbonization is not necessarily a challenge. Sometimes it gives you competitive advantage as well, and we should not be looking for the ways to somehow overcome this reality, but we need to strive to be effective in implementing it and adapt to the situation timely. When it comes to the private impact, I would like to say that I always choose railway transportation when it is possible.
Второй момент.
And second,
Буду
I will
и себя заставлять, и
try
всех заставлять сортировать
to
мусор,
sort out
потому что,
waste,
как вы услышали сегодня,
because as you have already
это
heard,
облегчает
this
дальнейший
simplifies
процесс
further
использования
process
этого
of
мусора.
reusing and recycling this waste.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо. Игорь Михайлович.
Igor, what do you say? Thank you very much for an opportunity to say about this, but I liked very much the situation that we have been discussing, this revolutionary situation. I like this word, revolution, when it comes to my private, personal impact. This year started as a sport year for me, and I would like to have more strength to continue pushing forward the idea of wind energy. So I want more time for this. Thank you.
Борис.
Boris, what do you say? The questions are very interesting. And I would like to say that, first of all, the electric transportation is very important. So we need to develop this energy net project because it's on the merge of transportation and energy problems. When it comes to the insights, we need Sergei Anatolyevich, to thank Sergei Anatolyevich for the view from the side of industry, because we, in energetics, we actually measure everything by balances, and when it comes to the regions, then of course this is a comprehensive question. When it comes to the electric transportation can be the main driver of making the climatic agenda or implementing the climatic agenda for the region. Thank you. Ernesto. What's my impact? When it comes to this conference, the temperature of heating went a couple of degrees below. So this is one of the signs. And another element, school, university, education. This is the topic I would like to focus on. There is an intra-regional competition at the moment. This is a good competition for financing, subsidies, and in the long run for the investment. And different regions wonderfully, in a sophisticated manner, show themselves. That would be interesting to see where we will go in a year. The second one is so we need to work together for the new generation, actually, to understand how the world develops. And also, I would like to say that it's a good idea to invest in R&D. In Russia and Europe, in fact, we have very low level of investment in this region. China invests $450 billion, and in America, in Asia, we actually have quite a small investment, small-scale project. Of course, it's state and private investment together. Thank you. And Alexei Kozhevnikov will finish it up. Alexei, are you with us? Okay.
Алексей решил, видимо, сэкономить на электроэнергии.
As far as I understand, this is his personal impact. He decided to save the electric energy, save power. So it's been a big discussion because we have had quite a lot of interesting discussions. I will make a summary in the social media. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I suppose that we should have rest before the next session related to robotic technology. This is a very important session. We are lagging behind in terms of robotic
участники, мы отстаем серьезно от Китая.
We are lagging behind behind China, and that's very important because China is several dozen folds above or ahead of Russia in terms of robotic technology. So I invite you to the next panel discussion and discuss what to do about it.